We're hoping they'll become as eye-catching or as recognisable as, say, a post office box.
While he knows he can't control the weather, Lee Sterry wishes he could work out what's been causing his side's slow starts in recent weeks. Both Brisbane and Canberra jumped to early leads in games played last week.
You can't really put your finger on it. Our preparation hasn't been great. Maybe that's got a bit to do with it. The wet weather, we've been on the balls about 3 times in 14 sessions, so you lose your sharpness and your touch and that, but really you shouldn't lose your intensities.
It's that lack of urgency that looks to have cost at least one player his spot. The squad is announced tomorrow.
The starting lineup, there was a few blokes that didn't do jobs in the first half last week, and they know who they are. And Wilson's injury as well, that throws a little bit of a spanner in the works too.
But for now, he'll be happy just to have fine weather to get his team on the paddock and preparing for the power.
It is really concerning because, as I say, at the end of the day, we haven't been on the balls as much as I'd like. So, but that's a part of professional football.
I think some of the committee members do have concerns about the impacts of that size of development on a community the size of Fern Bay, but the recommendation to Council is for approval.
While local teams played around them today, Newcastle's national side went back into training. Yesterday, 2 Soccer Australia inspections found Breakers Stadium fit for the Parramatta clash, but last night referee Brett Hugo thought otherwise, postponing the game an hour before kick-off due to unsafe conditions.
You've got to prepare mentally and, that's all you can do. And, we're having a bit of a run here today, so, stretch our legs and keep our minds focused on tomorrow night.
There's no guarantee that'll happen either, with the waterlogged ground facing another inspection tomorrow morning. The club, meanwhile, will seek an explanation from Soccer Australia as to why the match was called off so late. It's claimed it cost the Breakers up to $60,000, as well as being a big blow for fans. An early penalty saw Cessnock take first blood, and unfortunately for Western Suburbs there was plenty more to come, Zane Clark forcing his way through the Rosellas line. 8-0, Cessnock proved just as strong in defence as in attack, holding up a West reply. A heavy tackle then resulted in another penalty and more points for the Goannas. 10 points down, the Premiers finally replied, Jason Allen getting their first try of the season. Great passing then put Troy Hilder over the line, while an even better kick gave the Premiers a 2-point buffer at the break. But Cessnock did all the scoring in the second half, winning by 6 points.
Blue sky and cricket. It's been a while since Newcastle had seen both together, but Charlestown opener Rod Mace only saw a little out in the middle, caught for 3 off Terry Crittenden. On a testing number 2 sports ground pitch, the chances came only to frustrate Hamwicks. Steve Mace and Dave Brown put on 48 for the second wicket before Matt Trail made the vital breakthrough. Brown reached 22, he fell victim to Reece Soper, with Darren Herbert catching him out as the Premiers plunged into trouble, eventually all out some 131 runs behind. Hamwicks winning its first premiership since the 1971-72 season. In Premier League basketball, the Newcastle Hunters kept its new weapon, Ben Melmoth, under wraps early against Maitland. And with moves like this by Tony Jensen, it was easy to understand why. The Mustangs also had some sting in attack, but with Ben Melmoth menacing in defence, the Hunters proved a hard force to stop. Rob Atkin hitting 25 as Newcastle stormed home to a 118-98 win against Maitland.
When Newcastle Kawasaki shop owner Chris Hurst was awoken this morning to be told his shop had been broken into, it was only the first bit of bad news for the day. His car had also been stolen overnight, a discovery he made when he tried to go to the scene of the shop robbery.
Went to bed 11 o'clock last night, got the phone call 4 o'clock this morning, went out to get in the car and it was stolen too, out of the driveway.
It's the first time the store has been vandalised to such an extent. The total damage bill for the building alone topped $5,000. On top of this, several of the in-store bikes were slightly damaged, but at this stage it looks as though the burglars were unable to steal anything of great value.
They've made such a mess they couldn't get anything out anyway. So lucky the security people were here within 6 minutes and then the police. So unfortunately they got away, but none of the gear got away as far as we're aware.
Police now have the vehicle used in the raid. Adam Harper, NBN News.
Either an immobiliser or a lock or a GPS tracking device.
Newcastle's West End isn't exactly the thriving area it once was, but if Sydney developers have their way, it will soon boast 2 new hotels centring on this site west of the Palais Hotel, catering for both ends of the accommodation market. And although it's just been submitted as a development application, Council is confident the proposal will be met favourably.
and it recognises the fact that the council does have an initiative which says put the taller buildings in the western end and keep the lower profile in the eastern end where the heritage buildings are.
Things are looking up just around the corner too, with plans going before council tonight to see this former warehouse demolished to make way for the Westcourt development, a 7-storey commercial residential project housing around 30 apartments. The Business Chamber today welcomed both proposals, saying they'll cater for tourists visiting the city for the Masters Games in 18 months' time.
What we found on the surveys done of people that have been at the Masters Games, it can range from like caravans right through to 5-star accommodation, depending on what sort of money they've got to spend. So the mix of these two hotels looks very, very positive.
The Westcourt proposal is being considered by council tonight. Helen Kapalos, NBN News.
It's hard to believe this 28-year-old was in a 2-month coma 8 years ago after having a tumour removed from her brain. Now close to a decade later and a year after returning to the pool, Tracy Blair is ready to compete on the world stage as a backstroker.
Even her surgeon said she was fighting when she was unconscious and didn't know she was fighting. So it's just obviously the type of person she is. You know, she fights for everything.
Years of therapy, persistence and love from parents Greg and Lorraine and sister Bronwyn paying off.
We start out on a very basic level and she's just then gone from state championships to national level championships and has shown us talent.
But at lightning pace, she's done it very quickly.
Very quickly.
While the life-saving surgery left a legacy of speech challenges, it hasn't stopped Tracy talking, especially about the Games. And it's not Sydney she's thinking of.
I mean, you can go to Sydney any old time.
In the meantime, she's looking to raise money to attend the British Swimming Championships in June. So impressed with the determination and courage, students at Tracy's old high school at Belmont have been fundraising to help send her to the British Championships. And tomorrow they'll present her with a cheque at a very special school assembly.
It's just so exhilarating that they actually remember me.
The attack took place in a busy Newcastle street last February. Several onlookers witnessing the nearly fatal stabbing, which saw Anne McAdam Kelly rushed into emergency surgery. The mother of 4 was on her way to the family law court with her 4-year-old son when her husband approached her with a large kitchen knife, pleading with her to come with him. The couple had separated a few months earlier. His wife took out an apprehended violence order against him shortly after. Today in Newcastle District Court, 47-year-old Scottish immigrant William McAdam Kelly was sentenced to 16 years jail after pleading guilty to attempted murder. Whilst handing down the sentence, Judge Coulahan said that in his view it was more luck than good management that Mrs McAdam Kelly wasn't killed in the attack and that this was a serious attempt at murdering her. The judge said that he was also left with the overall impression that in interviews after the attack, the former fitter and turner was more distressed at his own predicament than what had happened to his own wife, and that his responses were rather self-pitying. He did concede that the offender was suffering from major depression at the time of the incident, but that it couldn't be linked to the act of crime. McAdam Kelly's legal representatives are now considering launching an appeal against the severity of the sentence. He will be eligible for parole in February 2011. Helen Kapalos, NBN News.
I've always ridden motorbikes, road motorbikes, and I have a fear of being in cars.
The Knights started their day in the classroom, not studying rugby league, but learning the theory of scuba diving. Knowledge that will come in handy this Friday night when they take on the Sharks. With Tony Butterfield serving a suspension, Bill Peden will again captain the side.
We've had pretty good form against the Sharks over the years, so we're quietly confident we can get the job done on the weekend.
Still on a high after last week's win over North Queensland, Warren Ryan's squad will be bolstered by the return from injury of the Johns brothers and Sean Rudder. To soccer, and the pitch at Breakers Stadium is still so wet and boggy that training had to be moved elsewhere today. As the squad prepares to travel to Perth for Sunday's clash with the Glory, management says its cash flow problem isn't affecting players.
Players have been played, and there is not one player that is owed any money other than what their contractual agreements are.
Paul Lobb, NBN News.
The 25th of April marks a significant day in Australia's history. It's Anzac Day, and the whole country stops to remember those who gave their lives. Today's early ceremony was organised by students from 5 local schools, so that fellow students could also appreciate the efforts of their predecessors. And to ensure the message was made clear, a few not-so-traditional songs and performances were added. It's the 46th year that the school celebration has been held, and was attended this year by Newcastle's Lord Mayor and representatives from the Defence Forces. Adam Harper, NBN News.
There's no doubt that Newcastle's graffiti artists find the central business district a continuing source of inspiration. But Newcastle Council says from now on, if they're caught, they'll be forced to clean up their act. Today, the council acquired a second graffiti blaster to take aim at the daubs, with 289 instances of graffiti reported in the city over the last 12 months.
If they want to take it further, I'd be prepared to make sure that our crew has a camera, so they take a photograph of it before they clean it off. We'll compile a log with that, we'll work with the police, and if there is a regular offender, we'll make sure we find them.
Last week, Bureau of Crime Statistics identified Newcastle as the state's 5th highest graffiti hotspot, the removal of which cost council almost $120,000 in a 7-month period. But even though council acknowledges the high-pressure combination of water and baking soda doesn't completely solve the problem, police say it serves as a very important deterrent.
It is going to make a big difference, but we also see it as a challenge too. There's going to be some people feel threatened by this removal and create a challenge.
Helen Kapalos, NBN News.
A 1,000 hopeful anglers lined up to register for the tournament last night, some coming all the way from Victoria and Queensland. Today, picture-perfect conditions greeted them for the start of competition, anglers of all sizes and abilities in trailer boats only, casting a line to try and snare $50,000 in prizes.
Oh, it looks pretty good to me. I'd rather be out fishing than standing in the tent talking to you, actually.
While some catches were big enough only for the dinner table, Matt Curry staked his claim early with this snapper, a shade under 8 kilograms.
Is there a bigger fish out there, you think?
Oh, definitely, mate. I'll show you that one in the morning, for sure.
Bigger and better still from Andrew Corder, the 12-year-old netting the biggest kingfish for a junior in tournament history and getting sore arms in the process.
They hurt a lot.
The tournament finishes on Sunday. Colin Baldwin, NBN News.
A picturesque scene or a disaster waiting to happen. Some Maitland residents would argue the latter as stormwater runoff continues to flood their backyards.
We were hoping to have a native plant garden growing here, but now we'll have to stick to water lilies, I think.
Construction on the home supercentre was started 4 years ago, and ever since, stormwater has had no place to go but pool in the surrounding properties. Last week, a young boy fell into the water and had to be rescued by one of the residents.
I just think, what's it got to take? A death before they realise something's got to be done here. Residents can't be left living with, the yard underwater.
The pond was drained out 18 months earlier when the issue was first raised, but residents say nothing has been done since and the waters keep rising. However, the Maitland Council says it's under control and an investigation is underway on how best to deal with the problem.
We're quite confident that the proper processes were followed and the development has now been constructed.
The residents would like to see a drainage easement built to carry the water off the 5 private properties and back into the Halls Creek flood catchment. Council isn't sure how long the investigation will take, but has promised to report back when a feasible solution has been reached. Adam Harper, NBN News.
After 2 years of work, the Clarence Smith Jeffries and William Matthew Curry Memorial Wall finally became part of Hunter military history today. Named after 2 local recipients of the Victoria Cross, the wall was fittingly opened by 2 of the last remaining recipients of the top award, Edward Kenner and Keith Payne. Both men seeing the memorial as a fitting tribute.
Those of the fallen are named on the wall rather than just a memorial that doesn't give a name. And I think it's, from the family point of view, I think it gives them, though it's a sorrowing thing, a lot of pride to say, well, they're not forgotten.
The heavens opened as the wall was blessed, people then laying wreaths to the fallen. And while the wall is finished, it's unfortunately not finalised. Other names will be added with the passing of time.
While ever there is an ex-serviceman being buried at Sandgate Cemetery, the families have the opportunity to come up and give us the information, and we will put a single plaque on with their name.
Colin Baldwin, NBN News. Bigger and louder than ever, the annual food and blanket run saw hundreds of Hunter bikers descend on the Newcastle foreshore, bringing with them the spoils of months of hard work.
People just roll up, they know what's going on, they know that there's a lot of needy people out there, so they bring what they can afford, and people even bring what they can't afford.
For the Salvation Army, the donations were more welcome than usual, with the coming winter looking particularly bleak.
Just in food alone, our budget's $120,000 for the year, and in about the first 6 months we'd spent $90,000 of that. So it's just a tremendous increase, but people just are not managing on the allowances or the benefits that they have.
And while it might seem an unlikely alliance to some, the bikers can't think of anyone they'd rather help.
Creditors of Derby's Pies gathered today to be briefed on the state of the company's finances. The 30 business creditors are owed almost $1 million in unpaid bills. The situation was brought on by a recent expansion and investment in new technology.
There's been expansion, which is always a drain. While new shop fronts get up to speed, they usually create losses which other shops need to subsidise.
76 people are employed at Derby's 12 outlets around Newcastle, including the newest store on Lake Road at Ellamore Vale. Administrators Lawler and Davidson believe the company's success over 20 years will help it trade out of trouble.
Generally, I gather the competition in the pie market, there are several pie makers in Newcastle, and it's very price competitive. Fortunately, Derby's has a good name for its product, and that's what's seen it survive up till today.
Paul Lobb, NBN News.
Every year, New South Wales Police respond to more than 16,000 reports of domestic violence, and the Lower Hunter is no exception. It's estimated 34% of assaults in the area are related to the crime, a problem Police Minister Paul Whelan today attempted to address with the launch of a new booklet.
The booklet is about removing the fear that some women may have in domestic violence circumstances. This is a book that will help them overcome that fear.
The pamphlet offers victims of domestic violence advice about several avenues of help, including legal and family support services. Today, the project was bolstered through a $5,000 state government grant, welcomed especially by those who deal with the problem every day.
We feel that by bringing this pamphlet out that we can get information out to the victims. Each police officer will have them with them. They can hand them out to the victims when they attend these incidents, and also the service providers will have them to hand out as well.
More than 30,000 copies are expected to be distributed throughout the Maitland area in the next 6 weeks. Helen Kapalos, NBN News.
14 years old and already a champion, Alyssa Searston took home 4 gold medals after her efforts at Perth in the Australian Age Swimming Championships. In the 200-metre backstroke, she not only smashed her own personal best time by 3 seconds, but she also became the 12th fastest Australian ever for that event.
My goal time was a 2:14. I was hoping to go that time, but I was a little surprised when I saw the clock at the end of the race.
Now she's returned home for some R&R and is winding down before her next big test, the Australian Open, which also serves as an Olympic selection event.
There's quite a few of us on 2:14. It's about 6 of us within a second, so it'll be pretty close.
And Alyssa wasn't the only one making waves in Perth. 14-year-old Queenslander Lysel Jones broke 4 Australian records in 2 days. Both youngsters are serious Olympic contenders. Adam Harper, NBN News.
Johns hasn't even been close to being 100% fit all season, so just making the test team was an achievement in itself. But at hooker, there's no way he could take on the Kiwis on Anzac Day.
It's still not right, so I'm really only kidding myself.
With that in mind, Johns will now rest up to get it right once and for all.
Probably about 2 or 3 weeks off, maybe a month, just get it right before the big games at the end of the year and hopefully the World Cup.
For his brother Matthew, the disappointment of not being selected at all is a surefire motivator this weekend.
I think probably the way we've played over the last couple of weeks, the nights too, and he probably hasn't helped himself either playing with the injuries. I'd say he'll be out to prove a point this weekend.
And the Knights will need him at his best after that mauling by the Sharks, the team rightly sticking to the sand today.
We didn't really get in the hunt. We sort of had a few close opportunities early. If we had have converted, it might have been different, but the way it was, it turned out a shame for us.
While winger Darren Albert showed them how it's done, forwards Tony Butterfield and Paul Rahihi had a more unique style to their sprint session. But the biggest blow of all was landed on Robbie O'Davis against the Sharks. The State of Origin rep could be out for anything up to 8 weeks after re-injuring the foot he broke in pre-season.
They've not behaved like a family. If they'd have behaved like a family from the beginning, they would have returned my son to me and they wouldn't have made these accusations against me.
They start off as a very small organism and grow into a worm about 1 metre long.
Not only does it keep the leaves and the debris out of the gutter, it also lets dust such as rubber dust, lead dust, acid rain and things of that nature, lets it all blow out when it dries.